Update the poll results. More phone calls coming up. Greg Anthony, part of the broadcast team, Cavs Pacers semifinal series. And he'll be there with Jared Greenberg, Spiro Didis. Game 5 tips off tonight. Cleveland at 7 Eastern on TNT, True TV, and Max. Good to see you again, Greg. How are you?
Good morning, Dan. How are you, man? A happy birthday, I hear, is coming up.
Yeah.
Is that the big 55? You're going to be 55? What's going on?
The game is limited now. I'm just free throw in, not free throw extended anymore. But don't leave me open. I'll hit a free throw. That's about it.
I love it.
All right. So I had some things to say about Jason Tatum. And we probably had 10 minutes, 15 minutes on the show. We were talking about him. And then you put out a tweet kind of asking me how could I come up with this or come to this conclusion about Jason Tatum. I feel bad talking about him where his season could be over.
Well.
So I just want to paraphrase something here. I think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. I think he's a great player. I just don't think he's a star is the point that I've been trying to make. Like Trae Young is a star. Anthony Edwards is a star. Luka's a star. Steph Curry's a star. I'm talking about I'm going to go out of my way to watch. Shai Gilgeous is not a star. I think he's a great player and will be the MVP. You can make a case Joker is not a star that you tune in to watch him play. That was the point that I've tried to make with Jason Tatum. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer and a great player. I think you tune in or you would go out of your way to see the Celtics, not Jason Tatum.
That's a fair assessment from your perspective, because I do think, in essence, you're saying he's not box office.
No.
There have been a lot of the greatest players who've ever played who weren't box office. So, listen, Tim Duncan was not box office.
Yes.
Fair, right? Like, so we get that. And I don't have an issue with that. And sometimes that's the difficult part oftentimes with sound bites and tidbits, because I didn't have the opportunity to kind of listen to your context.
Yeah.
And so from what I heard, I was like, wow. Now, I would push back a little because I actually do think Jason Tatum is a star. I do think he's somewhat underappreciated. And I think part of it is just the dynamic of the culture we live in, is that we've got to push the envelope on all these guys. And then we're having this conversation after what just transpired last night when he was having a monster game, although they were probably still going to lose that game. Based on how things are trending at the end, and you just hate to see it happen to him, because I also think the irony of that is he's one of the highest character guys we have in our league. He's one of the most accountable guys we have in our league, and he's been one of the most successful. I mean, if you go look at perspective, since he came into the league, he's played at more conference finals. He's won a championship. This will be his 4th consecutive first-team All-NBA. So I would tend to say, I think Joker's a star. Like, so that's just in a disagreement. That's more semantics, right? That's not necessarily saying they're not great players. But again, as a basketball nut, I would pay to see both of them play. But then again, I'd go pay to see 2 lottery teams play if I had to. I'm just a fan of the game. So I could definitely appreciate where you're coming from.
Speaking of the lottery, you okay with it? The format?
Yeah. So you know what, Dan? This is my philosophy on life. No matter what we have in place, what the system is, people are going to complain, because just like human beings, nobody's perfect. There is no such thing. We struggle with it all the time. So I try to focus more on the end result than just the minutia of the process. Like, too many people want to, because you can nitpick any process. And I'll give you a perfect example. Let's look at the national championship game we just had with the Final Four in basketball. And then with the championship in the NCAA for football. I was really happy with the end result. I thought the Final Four, you had the 4 best teams, right? You didn't have, in the championship game, you had no 5-star kids. You had no one-and-done kids. The ratings were through the roof. And instead of us focusing on, man, we got ultimately what we wanted, we want to get caught up in the drugs of the process. There is no perfect process. Remember, you're old enough to remember when there was 32 teams in the NCAA tournament. Mm-hmm. We're all old enough to remember when you didn't have a playoff for college football. And with each process that they changed it, the complaints never diminished. That's what we do in America, man. We just want to complain. It doesn't matter what the system is, how well it's functioning. So I have no problem with it. It creates excitement. I was against the play-in when they first introduced it. I think it was one of the best things ever happened to our league because it's helped to eliminate tanking. That's one of those words that's taboo in sports, right? We don't talk about tanking that much anymore in the NBA. And there was a time, as you know, where we discussed it ad nauseum. So I'm fine with it. I mean, how about the irony with the Mavericks getting the pick? And I sent Nico a text last night congratulating him because he's caught a lot of hell. And listen, you had to assume you're going to catch a lot of hell when you trade a star of the magnitude of a Luka Doncic who took you to the finals a year prior. So, yeah, I'm a fan of it. I think you want to try to make the game as healthy as possible and not turn your fan base collectively off. And this is one way that I think it's been a positive.
Talking to Greg Anthony, NBA on TNT analyst, spent 11 seasons in the NBA and won a title UNLV back in 1990. Let me go back to Luka. I just don't know why Nico wouldn't leak it that there is the possibility Luka could be available, because it feels like you could have gotten a little bit more, maybe a lot more. Like, I would have insisted Austin Reeves was in that trade. Like, I don't know why Dallas, wouldn't ask for that, but you could have gotten other teams who probably would have come up with a lot better trade proposal, don't you think?
Well, there's two things you got to consider. One, think about the backlash he's faced since the trade went down. If you leak that and it gets out, I think you create more problems than solutions. That's just a reality, and that's my perspective. Okay. I don't think you can leak that. And it's easy to Monday morning quarterback for all of us to say what they could or could not have got. I think what you got to focus in on, okay, what is the objective? Because a case in point, you could have gotten 4 first or 5 first-round picks, but their objective was to win now. Kyrie Irving's best basketball, hopefully he's going to recover, and he can still play at his heights, but he's not going to be better for the moving forward, right? You've got a small window to win now. So he wanted to match the timeline when after the trade was made of his 2 best players. And so that's why I think he went the route he did. Everybody can second guess it after the fact. But ultimately, listen, if they're healthy, that team would have been a better team than the Lakers just because of how they were built. Health plays a big role in it. It didn't materialize. Now you got the first pick, and now they're going to have more concerns and questions because I'm a huge Cooper Flag fan. But does he fit their timeline?
No.
Can you win? Like, this is a better situation, but there's some similarity if you go back to when the Warriors drafted James Wiseman with the 2nd pick. There was a lot of talk about, hey, should we move off the pick? And in that case, probably would have made more sense because I think there was a lack of consensus on just how good James Wiseman was. That was more of a Kwame Brown scenario from the standpoint that, you took him based on the potential, but he wasn't as certain. He wasn't the proven commodity that I think Cooper Flag is. And so there's going to be some concern or consideration. I would assume you're at least going to listen to see ultimately what can transpire. Because, again, you want to have a chance to compete at the highest level now. And getting that first pick creates a lot more leverage for Nico Harrison and the Mavs than they had going into that lottery.
Yeah, I think you got a 2-year window with Kyrie and AD, it feels like, in their prime. Hopefully both are going to be healthy-ish.
Yeah.
Cooper Flag's not going to be 19 until in the season.
Yeah.
And what can you expect from him? You got some big guys. Christie's good. He's a good addition for them. I agree with you. The timeline there, maybe not syncing up, but would you trade Anthony Davis and Cooper Flag for Luka?
Would I trade Anthony Davis? That's a tough question. Luka for Luka. Well, I think a lot of it's relative to who I am, what I have when I make that deal.
I'm joking. That if Dallas,
but like in essence, you're saying that's basically what happened.
Yeah.
Now, I would say that there's a lot of certainty with Luka. Listen, You got to build the right way around him. He's got to make a commitment to his body. The Denver Nuggets were in a similar situation with the Joker a few years ago. They went to him and said, "Look, we need you to commit to your body. That's how you commit to us." And he transformed his body. Became in much better shape. And I think there was maybe some conversations like that with Luka. Maybe it didn't go over well. I guarantee you the Lakers just had this conversation with him when they had their meeting with JJ and their front office with Pelinka when they had that dinner the other night. Because I do think physically he's got to get in better shape. I think it's going to behoove him to, and it is hard to do, but he's got to make that commitment to that organization if they want to have a chance to ultimately win a championship. There's a reason why Dallas, like people can poo-poo it and get mad all they want at Nico, but the reality is physically, and we saw it defensively, he was a liability in that series. And while they had other issues with the roster, as great a talent as he is, and I'm a huge Luka Doncic fan, I love the guy's skill set. You still need him to not at least be a liability. You don't have to be a plus defender, but you can't be a liability defensively, especially with his size. It's one thing if you got a small guard, but when you've got his size and physicality, he can have a much more impactful place on the defense for the Lakers.
Who, let's say they win their respective series, who is more dangerous, the Pacers or the Knicks?
As you get later in the playoffs, your best player's ability to play against great defense becomes more relevant. So I would say, and let me preface it by saying this, Dan. This is the first time since I've been in broadcasting, maybe even since I've been associated with the game, where I really felt like the final 8 teams could all win it. I'd never had that feeling because generally, you get an upset, you get a team or two in there, and you're like, they don't really have a chance. But I really felt like all things being equal, everybody healthy, everybody playing their best, that they all had a chance. Having said that, I love Indiana's team. I think they're really hard to defend because what they do is the hardest thing to do, which is defend the pass. They play fast. They put a lot of pressure on you, and they're a much improved defensive team. They were a top 4 team in the league since the first of the year. Having said that, you want a guy, we saw it last night with Brunson. You need a guy that can score against great defense. When you play a 7-game series, you can't trick anybody. You're not bringing in new concepts. You're not going to recreate how you play. We know what you do. You know what we do. And as you get later in the series, you got to have guys that can go beat their man, that can win matchups and compromise your defense. And Jalen Brunson has consistently in the postseason shown you he can do that. And they built that team to play the Celtics. They've got great positional size on the wing. Those guys are great two-way players with Anunoby and Bridges. And while they don't have the depth, it hasn't been an issue for them as of yet. And so I would, if those two teams end up meeting, and right now the odds are looking that way, they're both up 3-1. I would give a slight edge to the Knicks because of that. Now, having said that, this Pacers team, they are really good. I thought they were the most underrated team in the postseason. They've proven that to be the case. They've been dominant in this series. Now, there have been some injuries, this, that, and the other, but they have dominated a team that had been dominant over the entire regular season. So you got to tip your hat to Rick Carlisle and his group.
How do you think NBC is going to use Michael Jordan with their NBA coverage?
Oh, man, I was pumped to hear that, right? In a lot of ways, he became Michael Jordan at NBC, right? They both really benefited from that. That's where the game had its greatest growth to the likes of which we've never seen it. I've been really impressed with what they've done thus far. You've seen the promo they put out not too long ago where they incorporated all of their broadcast talent and people involved with the network of Peacock. I thought that was brilliant. It'll be interesting. I gotta believe that they're gonna have to be able to go back to who he was as a player. I hope they do that. I don't think he's gonna be in the studio show. I don't think he's gonna be doing games. But I would like to hear his perspective and how he looks at today's crop of stars and juxtapose that to what he dealt with. So I'm not sure how they're going to use him, but I'll be tuning in, obviously as we all are because of what he's meant to our game. And it's awesome that after all these years, he's at least going to let us, the viewing public, have a little insight into his mindset and who he is. I think The Last Dance helped with that. And I think this could be a furtherance of that.
Has Reggie Miller ever admitted that he pushed off?
Yes, multiple times. He's admitted it.
Okay.
But yeah, he did. But we listen, we gave that game away. And that game cost us, I think we lost that series. I mean, we beat them for the most part when we played against them. But yeah, that was haunting. I'm just glad I got to work the Bucks Pacers game when the Pacers did it to the Bucks. That kind of allowed me to purge some demons a little bit now, because that was an amazing game. And it's funny in the moment, there's such shock when you actually go through it. You have no real perspective historically, right? Until well after. So now on the outside looking in, watching that materialize, man, that is it's still hard to imagine something like that could happen. And unfortunately it happened to me, or to my nick. I'm glad that we now have something else to reference when it comes to historical comebacks. That's for sure.
Great to talk to you. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Thank you, Dan.
Greg Anthony, part of the broadcast team, Cavs Pacers, Game 5 tonight. That'll be on TNT, True TV, and Max.